Blades, staffs, axes, chains, and more. All tools of battle made to strengthen their wielder and make combat easier and more efficient. If you're a newer player to our game, you're probably wondering right about now how any of this connects to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't fault you one bit. Just as characters in role-playing games can be given various weapons to raise their power, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, we have the same exact concept. We call them equip spells, and despite them being seen in today's landscape as nothing more than a completely lost art from the dark ages of the game, on this channel, we not only examine but celebrate things like that. I'd be willing to bet that even seasoned Yu-Gi-Oh! Veterans first think of cards like Premature Burial and Snatch Steal if I were to say, name some equip spells that saw big time competitive meta play. However, I'm always looking for not just the interesting when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! History, but also the little known and unique. In this video, I'm giving you exactly that, as you're going to learn about one of the golden ages of equip spells and the incredibly cool competitive level Mahavelo deck that saw play during this time. You'll learn how and why the deck worked, and of course, the unbelievably obscure cards Duelists played in the deck. This is an OCG only story, and as my intro alluded to, takes place during the dark ages of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which honestly is just a roundabout and fancy way of me saying the DM era. During the very early days of the OCG DM era, raw attack power was heavily coveted, and that's because almost all the powerful mainstay meta effect monsters you might recognize from GOAT format, for example, weren't released yet. Sure, the game had loads of powerful removal cards like Raigeki, Trap Hole, and Dark Hole, but simply running over your opponent's monster with your own was a free way to get the same job done and expended minimal resources. In the first year of the OCG, with Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically having no powerful effect monsters, Duelists looked for other options outside of just removal cards for dealing with opponents' monsters and mounting an offense simultaneously. One option that became incredibly popular was powering up your own cards with equip spells so you'd always have the biggest guy on the board and thus win every battle. This is how Yu-Gi-Oh!'s first ever equip-based meta deck was born, which was aptly named Equipment Beat. Per usual, we don't bury the lead here in these videos, so that will be a story for another day. The important thing is that the strategy of a more advanced and nuanced version of Caveman Yu-Gi-Oh! Had proven to be successful on the competitive level, and when the OCG received its first name core booster set, creative players were eager to go right back to the well and try it again. Released following Volume 7 was my personal favorite set of all time, Magic Ruler. If you're confused because Magic Ruler was the third core booster set in the TCG, I don't blame you. Just know that Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Metal Raiders don't officially exist in the OCG. Premiering April 20th, 2000, Magic Ruler was, as the name suggests, a set about bringing legendary and powerful magic, now known as spell cards, to the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. From a historical standpoint, Magic Ruler is renowned for the amount of banned spell cards within the set. Whether that be Painful Choice, Snatch Steal, Giant Trunade, or what would soon be known in the OCG as the three hand sacred treasures of Confiscation, Forceful Sentry, and Delinquent Duo. But buried underneath all those ridiculously broken meta warping cards were a brand new round of attack bolstering equip spells which were about to reset the standard and inspire a wild new deck thanks to one little monster. The card I'm referring to was Mahavelo, a monster printed as a mere common, but one with an effect so unique and powerful, Duelists built an entire deck around it. Mahavelo was a level 4 light attribute spellcaster with 1550 attack and 1400 defense. Per usual, the effect is what really mattered here. It was simple, as its effect would grant it a 500 attack boost for every equip spell equipped to it. It may not seem like much on the surface, but in a meta landscape where players were unironically playing vanilla monsters in competitive decks, free attack value was always welcome with open arms. This was especially true when Duelists laid eyes on the new batch of equip spells like the Demon Axe or the Devil's Kiss. Forget about the old ways of Elf's Light and Invigoration, both of which had to be equipped specifically to a monster of a certain attribute for a mere 400 attack gain. These new cards started at 700 attack, had no requirements on what you could equip them to, and both had effects that would let you put them on top of your deck when they went to the graveyard. Ladies and gentlemen, this is power creep, right in front of your very eyes. There was simply no reason to run the old equip spells anymore, and the newer cards were downright scary when used in conjunction with Mahavelo. Now, with a simple 2-card combo, Mahavelo could reach an astronomical 3,500 attack while he was wielding the Demon Axe. That's bigger than a Blue Eyes White Dragon for the record, and it came with none of the tribute requirements. Here's a sample deck list of what Duelist concocted and attempted to bring into the competitive environment. A beatdown deck at its core with various elements of a control deck. The Mahavelo deck was best suited for countering monsters the opponent put up because of its versatile monster and spell lineup. If you needed raw power, look no further than of course Mahavelo itself, which usually was around 2750 attack when equipped with one card, but could easily reach nightmarish levels with the Demon Axe. Gemini Elf was also superb in these situations. These ladies basically reset the standard for a level 4 monster when it came to attack value with their insane 1900 attack, and brought the hammer down with or without equip spells. Our two primary beaters of Mahavelo and Gemini Elf were both also searchable from Witch of the Black Forest, so they weren't that difficult to get to either. When utility control effects were needed, cards like DD Warrior were sent in as easy removal for opposing Sangans, Witches, or Big Boss monsters. This deck was, of course, filled with the attack gaining equip spells to make the most out of Mahavelo, but also maxed out on the tempo changing Snatch Steal. Snatch Steal pretty much dealt with any opposing face-up monster and gave this deck more removal options prior to the battle phase. Speaking of the battle phase, Mirror Force wasn't the only playmaker this deck could count on to catch opponents off guard during that time. Kunai with Chains wasn't exactly a great card in totality, but it was super cheeky and downright excellent in this deck. The 500 attack gain wasn't often monumental, but that doubled when used specifically on Mahavelo, which made the card far more than worthwhile in this deck specifically. And yes, in case you're wondering, Mahavelo only needs to be equipped with a card to gain its effect. That card doesn't necessarily have to be an equipped spell. So ones like Kunai with Chain and even Metamorph, which was often used during this time in this same deck, could give you the additional attack boost. Lastly, Magician of Faith was played in this deck as basically a nice little bow on top. She could recycle any of the powerful equipped spells for free and help you reuse powerful blowout spell cards like Harpy's Feather Duster. One card you may not recognize, but one that definitely illustrates the times, is Tailor of the Fickle, a quick play spell that allows you the ability to switch one equipped spell with another appropriate target. This card was insane in mirror matches, or against opposing decks that also played equipped spells. Not just that, but it held some pretty nice plays just within the Mahavelo deck itself. You could attack, for example, with an axe-powered Gemini Elf, then use Tailor in that same battle phase to switch the axe to another monster and get even more damage in. Or shift your equips to monsters your opponent was trying to attack and destroy in battle for a solid 1-for-1 trade, but you'd still end up with field presence. As I just alluded to, these plays really got crazy when your opponent used equip spells and you would take those and put them on your own monsters. Heck, in some cases, you could even use it in conjunction with Snatch Steal to basically reactivate the card and take a new monster in exchange for the first one that you stole. The Mahavelo deck, however, was not without its flaws, and it had two major ones. The first could very well be mitigated with conservative play, as it was how easily this deck was punished for overextension. Mahavelo's attack could pierce the heavens with multiple equip spells, but this was an environment where Snatch Steal was completely unlimited and Harpy's Feather Duster was at 2. Both colossal ways of punishing a duelist who foolishly put multiple equip spells on Velo and didn't immediately end the game. For this reason, and honestly the meta landscape itself that was so packed with removal cards, it often felt like duels were taking place on a minefield, and you really didn't want to unnecessarily risk losing out on a 3-for-1 trade because you got too overzealous. The second flaw was a lot more difficult to offset. That was the prominence of the 3-hand Sacred Treasures. One of this deck's biggest strengths was going second, but that could honestly turn into a nightmare if your opponent opened with multiple of these cards and ripped your hand to smithereens before you even got a chance to play something. let alone all the knowledge that they'd gather. Confiscation, the Forceful Sentry, and Delinquent Duo were all inexplicably unlimited for 3 full months, and basically every deck was susceptible to this happening. So in a way, one of this deck's biggest strengths often wasn't able to shine due to OCG Konami's leniency when it came to the ban list. The deck would continue to see competitive play outside of the top tier meta level and was considered more on the roguish tier. It would, however, continue to garner play with duelists when that meta warping trinity was limited, and with the release of newer, even more powerful equipped spells like United We Stand and Mage Power in 2001's Spell of Mass Core Booster set. The Mahavelo Beatdown deck didn't become top tier meta even with those cards, but because of passionate players, its spirit lived on even a full year after its first release. And with that, we are at the conclusion to this Yu-Gi-Oh story. If you enjoyed the video, or more importantly, you learned something, give the video a big thumbs up and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, consider checking out the other stories I believe that you will enjoy, which should be on your screen right now. Thank you very much for watching, as always.